All right, last lesson that focuses on circles for a little while. This is it. So this actually isn't part of chapter 10. This is in chapter 13. So 13.6 focuses on the equation of a circle. So the equation of a circle, whose center is represented by the letters H and K, and has a radius using the letter R, has this formula. X minus H squared plus Y minus K squared equals R squared. Now, it seems long right now, but by next year you'll have it memorized. So notice one thing. The center is represented by the letters H and K. But when they're plugged into the formula, a positive H becomes a negative H. A positive K becomes a negative K. So when you plug into the formula, the signs of H and K are actually going to switch. So just be aware of that when you're plugging in. And just like my last video, that's the extent of my notes. The rest of it is really just going to be practice. So let's look at number 1. See if you can determine the equation of each circle. So the first piece of given information is that the center is 0, negative 2, and the radius is 3. So see if you can figure out which equation matches with this specific information. So since there's a 0 here, I don't actually have to put parentheses because x minus 0 is just x. So that's where the x squared came from. It's a negative 2, so when I plug it into the formula, y minus a negative, 2 negatives make a positive, so hopefully you picked the one that had plus 2, and equals the radius squared. 3 squared is 9. So that's the easiest problem you can get. So let's look at B. This time the center is the origin, and it passes through 6, 8. So the first thing you have to do here is you actually have to find the radius because it's not given to you. So if we're at the origin and we're passing through 6, 8, that means I would have to go to the right 6 and up 8. And whatever the, so let me draw a visual for you here. Whatever the hypotenuse is, there we go. Whatever the hypotenuse is going to be the length of the radius. So if I'm going to the right 6 and up 8, this is not to scale, I can do the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what the radius is. So 6 squared plus 8 squared is going to equal my radius squared. And if you know your triples by now, you know that you get 100 for r squared and the radius is 10. But I am plugging r squared into the formula, so I'm actually just going to not go any further. I'm just going to leave it as 100 equals r squared. Now I can plug in. So since it passes through the origin, that's going to be x squared plus y squared equal to r squared, which is 100. So just now you could have used the distance formula or the Pythagorean theorem to find the radius squared. That's up to you. All right, last one. This time they're giving you the endpoints of the diameter, and they are negative 3, 8, and 5, 2. So see if you can find the equation of that circle. So the first thing I did is I found what's the length of the full diameter using the distance formula. And I found that the diameter is 10. So that must mean that the radius is 5. Next, I need to find the center of the circle. So to do that, I need to use the midpoint formula. So I can say negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2, 8 plus 2 divided by 2, and we will get the center to be 1, 5. So now the last step is to write the equation. So I'm going to use the center. So x minus 1 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals the radius squared, so 25. Okay, another type of question you may get on your homework is to find the center, the radius, the diameter, the circumference, and the area of one circle. So using this equation right here, see if you can identify each of the pieces. So the first part, the center, is our h and our k, so I have to remember to take the opposite sign. So a positive 3 becomes a negative 3, and a negative 7 becomes a positive 7. This 81 represents the radius squared, so if I just want the radius, I would do the square root, and I would find that the radius is 9, which means that the diameter is double that, 18. Circumference is pi times diameter, so 18 pi. And area is pi r squared, so that would be 81 pi. Now, you may be given an equation of a circle, and you have to determine whether a point is in, on, or outside the circle. So in order to do that, you're going to have to plug in each of these points into the equation. So for example, for the first one, I'm going to plug in 8 for x and 4 for y, and I'm going to multiply everything out. If this left side is equal to 100, it will be on the circle, that point. If the left side is less than the 100, it will be inside the circle. And if the left side is greater than 100, it will be outside the circle. So if you do all the math here, you end up getting 6 squared plus 8 squared. And if you know already, 6 squared plus 8 squared does equal 100. So since it is equal, this point will be on the circle. So see if you could figure out for B, is 0, -6 in, on, or outside the circle? So if I plug in 0 for x and -6 for y, it ends up simplifying to -2 squared plus -2 squared, which is 8. 8 is less than 100, so this point is in the circle. And last but not least, see if you could figure out whether C is in, on, or outside the circle. So plugging in -9 for x and -1 for y, you get -11 squared plus 3 squared. That is equal to 130, which is greater than 100. So this point is going to be outside the circle. So by plugging in, you could determine whether the point is in, on, or outside. So number 4, I'm going to demonstrate for you because you obviously can't graph through an Edpuzzle. So we're going to use a coordinate plane to graph this circle with the equation x minus 5 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 81/4. So the only two pieces of information I need in order to graph a circle are the center and the radius. So using the formula, I can see that the center is going to be a +5 and a +2. So that's the first thing that I'm going to graph. The radius is equal to the square root of 81/4 because this is r squared. So I'm going to take the square root of 81/4, and square root of 81 is 9, square root of 4 is 2, so you really get 4/2. So my radius is 4/2, which means I have to start at my center, and I'm going to go 4/2 in every direction. So I'm going to go to the right, I'm going to go down, to the left, and up. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And then if I connect, and I'm going to do my best sketching here, if I connect all my points, I will get my circle. So that is how you graph a circle. Plot the center point, find the radius, and count that many in all directions, up, down, left, and right. Last but not least, see if you can find if you have point P, which is 8, 3, and it lies on a circle with a center of 4, 5. See if you could find the equation of the line that is tangent to the circle at point P. So just to give you a little bit of a visual, center is 4, 5. Here's the point on the circle. You're trying to find what is the equation of this line right here. So if you remember, if you draw a radius in to the point of tangency, then that radius and that tangent are perpendicular to each other. So if we can find the slope of the radius, then we should be able to find the slope of the line that is tangent to the circle. So to find the slope of the radius, I'm going to use the 2 points that are given to me. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. So the change in y, 5 minus 3, over the change in x. Solve that out, you're going to get 2 over negative 4, which is really just negative 1/2. Now that's the slope of the radius. I want to find the slope of the tangent, which is perpendicular to that radius. And if you remember, when two lines are perpendicular to each other, their slopes are negative reciprocals. So if the slope of the radius is negative 1/2, the negative reciprocal of that, which means to flip it and take the opposite sign, is positive 2. Now I need to figure out, because I'm trying to find the equation of this line. Remember, lines are in y equals mx plus b form. I know my m, I know my slope, it's 2, but now I have to figure out what b is. So to do that, I can actually plug in the pieces I know and solve for b. So pick either one, I'm sorry, not either one. Pick the point of tangency, because that point is on the line, and plug it in. So y would be 3. I know my slope is 2. X is 8. And I don't know what b is. And if I solve this out, I'll get negative 13 is b, which is my y-intercept. So now fill back into the formula using your slope and your y-intercept, and you'll get y equals 2x minus 13. So that is how you find the equation of a tangent line. You have to find its slope using the negative reciprocal, and you have to find the y-intercept by using the point of tangency. So those are your sections for this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to bring them to office hours.